The campfire crackled, spitting embers into the inky blackness. A bottle of cheap beer warmed in my hand, and the low hum of crickets provided a soothing backdrop to the night. Across the fire, Mark and Kevin were locked in a heated debate about the merits of Bigfoot documentaries, their voices a little slurred.
Come on, man. You gotta believe. The evidence is, well, it's out there.
I chuckled, taking a swig of my beer.
You're just a skeptic, Dave. You don't believe in anything spooky.
Though I knew they were right. I'd always been the rational one, the one who rolled his eyes at ghost stories.
Then tell us a scary story, Dave.
Mark challenged,
Something real.
his eyes gleaming in the firelight. I had one story, a story I'd never told anyone, a story that still sent a chill down my spine. And I'd carried it most my life, but it was weird. Not the kind of weird that made you jump, but the kind that made you question yourself. All right, I said, my voice low, but you guys have to promise you won't tell anyone. It stays here, okay? They exchanged excited glances and nodded. When I was a kid, around 7 or 8 years old, I had this recurring dream. I stiffened in my chair. It always started the same way. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, disoriented, like I was being pulled from a deep sleep. I'd get out of bed, and I'd always walk to my parents' bedroom. It was at the far end of the upstairs hallway, with that long balcony overlooking the family room. You know, the one with the weird wrought iron railing? They both nodded. Anyway, I'd walk down the hallway, and when I got to their room, it was always empty. No parents, no lights, just darkness. But I'd always feel this pull, this urge to go to their walk-in closet. And every time I opened the closet door, I'd wake up. I paused, taking another swig of beer. The fire crackled, and the silence stretched.
That's creepy.
Kevin said. Yeah, but that's not the weird part, I continued. One night my parents were on a business trip and my grandma was babysitting. She was asleep on the couch downstairs. I woke up and I remembered the dream. And I decided to reenact it. Mark and Kevin leaned forward, their eyes fixed on me. I don't know why. Maybe I thought, well, I don't know what I thought. Anyhow, I got out of bed, walked down the hallway, and went into my parents' room. Just like in the dream, it was empty. I walked to the closet, my heart pounding, and I opened the door. It was just a regular closet, clothes hanging neatly, shoes lined up on the floor. But something felt off. A subtle wrongness, like a note played just slightly out of tune. I started searching, running my hands along the walls, and then I found it. A latch, a hidden, almost invisible. I pulled it, and a section of the wall swung open, revealing a narrow, winding staircase leading down into darkness. I took a deep breath, and then I made my way down. It was cold, damp, and the air smelled old, like dust and forgotten things. The staircase made no sense, considering its depth. So, when I reached the bottom, I was met with what appeared to be a basement. Not my basement, although I got the sense that I'd been there before. It was oddly familiar to me. So this basement wasn't some concrete-floored, dark and dingy one, but a finished basement. The floors were carpeted with this really thick, almost shag-like carpeting. And the walls were decorated with various framed family photos strewn throughout. But for some reason, the people's faces were blurred in such a way I couldn't see them. Almost like they were smudged or intentionally obscured. I then attempted to explore further in this basement. And it's here, when I attempt to move, I notice the shag rug makes my movement sluggish and very difficult. So, after much effort, I did make my way slowly around, where I realized how truly massive the basement is. I then heard a faint sound. A muffled, almost rhythmic hum that seemed to vibrate through the thick carpet. I eventually discovered that the sound was coming from upstairs. I desperately made my way to where I thought the stairs were. It's there I came across something that turned this into a nightmare. The stairs were missing. I mean, I saw the doorway. I heard the sounds coming from beyond the door. And then I picked up on another sound, The sound of people talking, plates and silverware either being put out or away. The sounds of a normal evening. What transpires next has forever perplexed me. The chatter ceases. I hear a brief sound, like someone speaking, but it's muffled. And it was my voice.
Mom, please.
Kevin speaks.
Parents will be there.
Dude, you're fucking with us. Right, man?
I wish I was.
So, what happened next?
Well, here's the thing. I begin to pick up on one particular voice, my voice, but I sound older, and the words were chilling.
Okay then, what were you saying?
Don't freak out. Their eyes grew wide, and I hesitantly continued. Do you recall that kayaking trip Steve invited us to when we were 12 or so? Kevin speaks up.
Yeah, who could forget? I was on a family vacation and what you two couldn't get the okay from the parents. It's horrible what happened.
I continued. Yes, Steve's body wasn't found for a month. The current took him miles downstream.
Dave, so what you're telling us is that what you were hearing in that weird basement was you asking your parents to go on the trip with Steve?
Yes, it makes no sense. The whole thing sounds like bullshit, but hear me out. So I would end up exploring this second basement on occasion when nobody was around, and every time, it's the same freaking thing at the door I overhear. The same conversation.
Did you ever try and communicate with it?
No, and it's been a good 10 years since I ventured down there. Which brings me to why I set up this camping trip. The two of their faces tensed up. As you know, my parents are moving. House just went up for sale last week, and I can't shake this feeling that this might be my only opportunity to, well, try that out.
Man, if what you're saying is true, let's say you do end up climbing up there somehow, considering the lack of a staircase and slip some note under the door, maybe advising your younger self of Steve's ultimate demise on that kayaking trip. Not only is there a good chance you or your parents will not read it and toss it, but let's say hypothetically they do read it and act upon it, reaching out to Steve's family, more than likely they'll just blow it off. Not to mention the whole changing the past thing could potentially alter the future.
I snapped back. Okay, Doc Brown, but what if?
First, Dave, I want to make it clear, and don't take it personal, that I don't believe your story like on this magical basement thing. But just for a moment, let's say I did, then prove it. Take us to it. Then we can talk on what happens next.
I respond, deal. Will tomorrow morning work? My parents are set up in an Airbnb, and the house is being shown. No showings on the books tomorrow. Mark and Kevin, stunned I had called their bluffs, turned to each other with a surprised look. Eventually, the fire began to die down, and the air, once thick with the scent of wood smoke and the lingering aroma of cheap beer, slowly faded. But now, seemingly replaced with a palpable tension that hung in the air, a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. Tomorrow morning, I repeated, my voice firm. Be there at 10. The house is on Hillrise Drive, number 191. You know the place. And remember, I added, my voice dropping, not a word to anyone. Mark and Kevin nodded, their faces grim. The playful banter of earlier had vanished, replaced by a sense of unease. They were skeptics, but something in my voice, in the way I told the story, had gotten to them. The rest of the night passed in a strange, subdued silence. We huddled around the dying embers, each lost in their own thoughts. The cricket's song seemed to have faded away, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. The air hung heavy, thick with unspoken questions and a creeping sense of dread. The next morning, the sun rose across the campsite. We packed up our gear in a tense silence, the events of the previous night still weighing heavily on our minds. The usual camaraderie of our camping trips was absent, replaced by a palpable tension. At 10 o'clock sharp, we all pulled up to the house. The for sale sign stood prominently in the foreground, the house a stark white against the bruised, storm-laden sky. The house itself seemed to exude an air of unsettling stillness, a picture of suburban normalcy gone subtly awry. It was a two-story colonial with black shutters and a neatly trimmed lawn, but the perfection felt artificial, almost menacing. A low, dense hedge, sculpted into perfect rounded mounds, lined the front of the house like silent, watchful sentinels. They seemed to stare, judging. The house stood in stark isolation compared to the vivid memories I had when it was occupied. Now it appeared as a beacon of false normalcy, a stage set for a play no one wanted to perform. My hands began to almost tremble as I unlocked the front door. The house was well staged for showings, but it might as well have been empty. It felt strange to be back, to walk through the rooms that had once been so familiar, so full of life. Now they echoed with an emptiness that chilled me to the bone. I led them upstairs, down the hallway with the balcony that overlooked the family room, with the raised ceiling, to my parents' bedroom. The room was devoid of any personal effects, just the stage furniture, the bed, a small sofa. The closet doors stood open, revealing the neatly arranged clothes and shoes. I then walked to the back of the closet, my heart pounding in my chest. "Here," I said, pointing to the wall at the back of the closet. This is where the latch was. Mark and Kevin exchanged skeptical glances. Mark stepped forward and ran his hand along the wall, searching for the hidden latch. He pressed and prodded, but nothing happened.
Dude, there's nothing here. No hidden door, no magical closet. For Christ's sake, man.
"I'm not," I insisted, my voice rising. A flicker of panic began to rise within me. Had I imagined it all? Had the years blurred the lines between reality and dream? I pushed Mark aside, my fingers tracing the smooth surface of the wall. After a moment of frantic searching, I found it. A tiny indentation, almost invisible to the naked eye. I pressed it, and a soft click echoed through the room. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing the narrow, winding staircase leading down into darkness. Mark and Kevin stared, their mouths agape. The skepticism in their eyes was replaced by a mixture of shock and disbelief. "I told you," I said, my voice trembling. I grabbed a flashlight from my backpack and shone it down the staircase. The air emanating from the depths was cold and damp, carrying the same musty old smell I remembered from my dreams.
You're going down there?
Mark asked, his voice laced with apprehension. "We all are," I said, my voice firm.
Come on, man, this is crazy. Well, it's not a crawl space. There's freaking stairs in there, man.
We came this far. I took a deep breath and started down the staircase, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. Mark and Kevin followed close behind, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. The descent was long and disorienting. The air grew colder, the smell more pronounced. The silence was broken only by the sound of our footsteps and the occasional drip of water. After what seemed like an eternity, we reached the bottom. The basement was exactly as I remembered it. The thick, shag-like carpet muffled our footsteps, and the walls were adorned with framed family photos, their faces blurred beyond recognition. The same unnerving, unsettling feeling washed over me.
I'm already having trouble wrapping my head around. I'm already teetering on the edge of reason here, guys. All this, is it wise to add to it? I'm not sure I'm equipped for all this, Dave.
Kevin muttered, his voice barely audible. I shone the flashlight around the room, searching for the doorway that led to the missing staircase. It was there, at the far end of the basement, a dark, imposing doorway that seemed to radiate an unnatural chill. As we approached, the faint hum I had heard in my dreams grew louder, more distinct. It vibrated through the floor, through the walls, through us. We reached the doorway. I could hear the muffled sounds of voices, the clinking of plates and silverware. And then I heard it, my own voice, saying those chilling words, "Don't freak out." I froze. The fear that had been simmering within me now boiled over, a wave of pure terror washing over me. What awaited us on the other side? What secrets lay hidden in the depths of this impossible basement? And what would happen if we dared to cross the threshold? "So guys, What's going on in those heads of yours? Kevin's voice was tight, his hands fluttering in a nervous, almost frantic gesture.
Why, Dave, after all this time, haven't you, well, like told your parents, for Christ's sake, the police for that matter, or feds? I don't know somebody. I mean, this is beyond insane.
I don't know, man, I admitted, a cold dread settling in my stomach. When you're a kid, you don't think straight. Rationale wasn't my strong suit. Then as time went on, it just faded. I chalked it up to something my mind made up. But well, here we are. Kevin's eyes narrowed.
Dave, does your dad own a gun?
No, why? I asked, puzzled.
You're sure? Completely positive?
Yes, I'm sure. Why?
Well, if we accomplish climbing our asses up there and come barging through that door, come on, man, look at us. 3 30-year-old men with 5 o'clock shadow wearing flannels just come barreling into your parents' kitchen. We're lively to get ourselves shot. What are we thinking here? So you said your younger self was asking permission for the kayaking trip, right? Okay, well, if truly this is some strange loophole to the past, then what? That would make it the year 1992.
Kevin said, his voice laced with a grim urgency. He was right. Dead right. We had no idea what waited behind that cellar door, only the distorted whispers and half-truths it had allowed us to hear. But the what-if gnawed at me, a relentless, icy serpent. Guys, I said, my voice trembling slightly. There's a lot we don't know. Hell, we don't know anything. We're in uncharted territory, and beyond Mark's encyclopedic knowledge of Back to the Future, none of us are quantum physicists. But I can't force you to come. If there's even a sliver of a chance, a 1% chance of stopping Steve from going on that trip, I have to take it. Kevin and Mark exchanged a long, uneasy look, gauging the other's resolve. Then they both turned to me.
Okay, we'll do it. But we need a plan. With limits.
Kevin said, his voice strained. We huddled together in a corner of the basement, the damp chill seeping into our bones. We started with frantic brainstorming, then slowly, painstakingly, we forged a plan. A plan built on limitations. How far were we willing to go? What would make us turn back? We decided to start small, with a gradual escalation. Plan A was simple, the least risky. A note slipped under the door, or somehow into the past. Do not allow Steve to go on the kayaking trip. Irreversible and grave consequences if he goes. Vague, ominous, but we hoped that the sheer weight of the warning would somehow stick. Kevin dug into his worn camping bag, the canvas rough against his knuckles, and produced the only thing resembling paper, a crumpled receipt from his pre-trip beer run. It was flimsy, stained with faint rings from condensation, but it would have to do. I uncapped the Sharpie, the pungent smell of ink filling the close air, and with a deliberate hand, I scrawled the ominous message. All right, it's done. Now we need to get it under that door, I declared, the words echoing slightly in the confined space. But staring up at the sliver of space beneath the aged, imposing door, the problem was obvious. We had no means of reaching it. No tools, no makeshift levers, nothing. We were left with the primitive solution of human scaffolding.
Easy, man.
Mark cautioned, his voice tight with nervous energy. He carefully placed his boot, caked with dirt from the trail, into my cupped hands. The weight shifted, a precarious balance, and I felt the strain in my arms as he stepped onto Kevin's broad shoulders.
Slow.
There was a moment of terrifying wobble, a collective gasp, before Mark steadied himself. I reached up, my fingers brushing the rough wood of the door, and passed the folded receipt. Mark, his arm outstretched, finally snagged it, his breath coming in short, shallow bursts. With a deft flick of his wrist, he slid the paper under the door, the thin scratch of paper on wood the only sound.
I don't hear anything up here, Dave. Does the sound come and go, or is it looped or something?
Mark asked, his voice hushed, as if afraid to break the silence. No, I replied, my gaze fixed on the dark, unyielding wood. It happens once, like when I go down. A single, distinct sound. Mark climbed back down, his movement slow and deliberate, the tension in the air palpable. We breathed a collective sigh of relief, a brief exhalation of pent-up anxiety, but it was quickly replaced by a heavy, gnawing dread.
Now what? We can't just wait a day or two, not with the house showings. Now that you have us in it, we can't leave this unresolved.
Mark repeated, his eyes flickering towards the shadowed corners of the hidden passage. You're right. We need to go back upstairs, leave the closet, and return, I stated, my voice firm, despite the unease swirling within me. We need to see if anything's changed behind the door, if the sound has reacted. A collective eye roll rippled through the group, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity of our situation, but they followed my lead. We trudged back up the winding, claustrophobic stairs, each creak and groan of the aged wood amplified in the silence. We emerged from the hidden door, the sudden brightness of the upstairs closet momentarily blinding us. A quick, wordless exchange, a shared glance of apprehension, and we turned, retracing our steps back down into the depths of the house, the unseen presence beyond the door looming larger with each descending step. As we got to the door that was high above us and without a staircase, the sounds began. Shh, guys, listen. Intently, we stood still, eagerly trying to interpret what we were hearing. And the sound of plates and silverware kicked up, followed by the muffled noise of conversation. Then after a period of time, it began my voice. I strained to hear any divination in my voice. Then it happened.
Amy, is this the receipt from Circuit City?
Our group collectively palms our foreheads.
Never mind. Wait, Fastmart? Budweiser? When did you buy beer, hun? You didn't? Well, somebody did. It's going in the trash. Tell me, when did you start drinking? Oh, you didn't? Well, the receipt would say different. Hell, I didn't, and I'm positive Dave didn't ride his bike to attempt to buy beer. I thought we were past this, after all we had been through.
There was a change from the usual routine. It was my father's voice. Shh, listen, I whispered, holding my breath. We froze, straining to decipher the whispers echoing from beyond the inaccessible door. For long, tense minutes, the indistinct sounds swirled. Then, as suddenly as they'd begun, my father's voice faded, and silence descended. We exchanged glances, the same unspoken question etched on each of our faces. My mind raced, a memory surfacing, James Gleick's chaos, making a new science. I'd stumbled upon it in a dusty used bookstore, drawn by its enigmatic title. Gleick's exploration of the butterfly effect, how a minute shift in initial conditions could unleash a cascade of unpredictable consequences, had always lingered in my thoughts. Could our presence, a seemingly trivial intrusion, have set in motion a chain of events with unforeseen repercussions? Was this a genuine glimpse into the past, or something more, a distortion, a ripple in time itself? Gleick's words echoed in my mind. It wasn't a single butterfly's wing that caused a tornado, but the subtle, amplifying power of interconnected events. The inherent unpredictability of complex systems, the limitations of foresight, these were the core tenets of chaos theory. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Had we inadvertently nudged the delicate balance of things? Had we, in our curiosity, triggered a ripple that would spread, unseen and unstoppable, through the fabric of time? The world, as Gleick had shown, was a web of intricate connections, where even the smallest actions could unleash vast, unforeseen consequences. And I feared, with a growing certainty, that we had just disturbed that web. That didn't go the way we thought. And I murmur, no, it didn't, we need to reset the loop. Reset the loop? Yes. I figure every time that we enter anew that hidden door, the sequence begins again. The way I see it, we need to climb those stairs in the enter again. From what I gather, the conversation should configure back to, well, me, asking to go on the kayaking trip. From what you gather? Yeah, that's how I see it. Kev, I too am now in uncharted territory. Well, let's get at it. As we finished the final steps and made our way out, we were struck by the overwhelming feeling that something had changed. My parents' once staged bedroom had now seemingly changed. Furniture was different, bedding, well, everything. And then we heard voices coming from downstairs appearing to be speaking French. A cold dread creeping up my spine like icy tendrils. The familiar hum of the house, the subtle creaks and groans that usually accompanied it, were absent, replaced by a suffocating strangeness that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. As we gathered ourselves to head back down, a wave of wrongness washed over us, a disorienting sense of displacement. Quietly, we crept down the stairs, each step a silent betrayal of our presence, fear a tangible presence in the air. The familiar rhythm of the house had been replaced by an unsettling dissonance, a discordant melody that hinted at a reality twisted and warped. "Guys," I said, my voice strong, a desperate attempt to maintain control in the face of the mounting chaos. "There's something you need to know. My mom, she used to struggle with alcoholism. And I think that damn beer receipt, that seemingly insignificant detail, triggered something. Something that's changed the future. Something that's irrevocably altered the course of events."
So,
Kevin interrupted, his voice laced with a nervous edge.
that beer receipt, it could have started a chain reaction, a cascade of events leading to a divorce, them moving out, creating this bizarre foreign reality we're now in.
"Kev, don't," I snapped, trying to keep my voice steady, to project an illusion of control that I didn't feel. The sequence should have reset when we hit the basement. It should have erased the changes, returned us to the familiar timeline. Mark and Kevin exchanged a look, a silent agreement that spoke volumes. They shook their heads, a gesture of disbelief and fear, and a silent acknowledgement of the terrifying truth that we know we're trapped in, a reality that was no longer our own. We were adrift, lost in a sea of an altered reality, and the compass that once guided us, well, I prayed it showed true north. We made it to the door without stairs, and a fleeting sense of calmness entered us when the dialogue behind the door kicked up. The loop had reset. Now that we had remedied our mistake, it was clear for us to enact Plan B, a plan we prayed that we wouldn't have to attempt. The silence hung heavy as we tried to piece together our next move, when a voice, smooth as polished obsidian, shattered the stillness. It wasn't loud, but it resonated, sending a chill down our spines. We turned, eyes wide, to face the source. A figure, shrouded in shadow, occupied a dark leather club chair, an apparition that seemed to materialize from thin air. The man's voice, each syllable precise and deliberate, cut through our confusion.
"So,
He began, a hint of amusement in his tone.
you thought to alter the past. But it appears, however, that you've managed to fracture the future."
"Who are you?" I blurted out, my voice betraying my fear.
"I'm the progenitor, but you can call me Winton,"
He replied, a faint smile playing on his lips.
You can call me Winton. And as you've likely surmised, you're not meant to be here.
"Here? Where is here?" I muttered, a growing unease settling in my stomach. Winton leaned forward, the leather creaking softly.
Everything,
He said,
has its exigencies, its quirks. And you, Dave, seem to have stumbled upon mine.
He produced a gleaming cigarette case from his suit pocket and lit it, the smoke curling around him.
Sometimes The lines between dreams and the constructs of reality intersect. But to answer your question,
He continued.
this is a way station of sorts. An access point for progenitors like myself. These points of quantum accession serve strictly scopophilic purposes.
We exchanged bewildered glances, the word scopophilic hanging heavy in the air.
Now then, your intentions, though noble, have yielded a problematic outcome, you see. And well, Steve's survival has triggered consequences far more dire than you can imagine. And not just for you three, but for the world.
What? Does he become some kind of monster? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice.
It's not that simple.
Winton replied, his voice laced with a hint of weariness.
Think of it as deterministic chaos. Underlying patterns that are, well, sensitive to initial conditions. A tiny alteration, you see, can lead to a catastrophic divergence. And you've unintentionally introduced a concatenation of events, or what we call an eternal return of bullshit, if you will. You all might perceive everything as random, but you'd be very wrong. It's a complex web of interconnectedness.
So can you fix it?
Kevin asked, his voice tight.
Unfortunately, Kevin,
Winton said, exhaling a plume of smoke.
the change you've made to this nonlinear system has resulted in a significant divergence, well beyond my capabilities. I can only recall a handful of comparable situations in the past, measuring to this magnitude.
Confusion and worry are shown on our faces. The man stands up, then gestures with his hand holding the cigarette.
Imagine a double-rod pendulum set in motion. Okay, now you see a slight change in its starting position leads to a wildly different trajectory. That's what you've done, thus leaving you all with no viable line of protection. And this is the part you're not going to like, until a complete re-rendering of 92E19976689C can be completed. You, my friends, must make do well somewhere. Your mere presence or potential actions will be null and void.
This is insane. So not only have I obtained the numbing knowledge that time travel exists, but on top of that boggling fact, this all may be some sort of simulation. Dave, what have you gotten us involved in? I was fine working my job and coming home to my gold retriever, Dorothy. You've really done it now, Dave.
So while whoever you all are, try and remedy our predicament, our timeline. Well, where do we go?
Now then, gents, if you don't mind, I need to get well back. But you, my friends, will neither be going back nor forward. Rather, your chariot vestigial of sorts awaits. Dave, that is the question, isn't it? You'll be rendered to batch 108, escape we progenitors call progregation alpha. You'll find it, well, a bit arduous, but I think the three of you will fare well. Do please remember, you three are not the only ones temporarily residing there. No goodbye. I hope to see you sooner rather than later.